Hey, thanks for joining me. In today's video, we're going to compare the new VTOMAN 600X with the Jackery Explorer. Whoa, this is a 1000. Man, that doesn't seem fair. I mean, this is like 1,000 watt hours, and this is about 300 watt hours. I've got an idea. Yes. Man, that thing is a beast. Yeah, this definitely will work. Okay. Yep. For sure. All right, it's done. Let's just see how we did. Oh yeah, this is much better. Yep. Yeah, that is much smaller. I think that'll do. All right. That is much more fair, wouldn't you say? So we're going to compare the new VTOMAN Jump 600X with the Jackery Explorer 300. Basically the same watt-hour capacity, but some notable differences. Let's jump into it and find out. So right out of the gate, you do see a size difference, but now the Jackery is actually a little bit smaller. That's because lithium NMC is a little bit more energy dense than lithium iron phosphate. So if you kind of look at these two guys, there is a fairly significant size difference between the two. And yet they are both basically the same watt-hour capacity. And lithium iron phosphate has definitely some advantages over lithium NMC. And we're going to find out on balance how those weigh out. And we're going to look at some other interesting advantages that this might have over this, and we'll see how they stack up. But before we do that, let's go ahead and jump back in time and get this thing out of the box and see what you get. One, user manual. All right, so there's the unit, the VTOMAN Jump 600X. Take a look at that in a minute, see what's in the box here. Boxes. All right, power cable, and a nice small AC adapter. That's all that's in there. And then we have a 12-volt car charger with a DC 5521 connector on it, and a Type C to Type C, and a Type A to Type C USB cable. All right, so on this particular unit, it does appear that it does not come with the jumper cable module, which plugs here in the front. But I should note that this unit also does have a battery expansion option. So I don't have any information on that yet, but maybe I will by the time I put the video up. We'll see. Yeah, nice big light on the front. The branding is updated like it is on the bigger ones now. It's just different than the one that I have. It's got the VTOMAN V on the side. On both sides. So anyway, I think what we want to do is go out and run some tests on this and see how it compares to this guy. This is the Jackery Explorer 300. So let's go run these things through a variety of tests and we'll find out how the new Jump 600X from VTOMAN stacks up to the Jackery Explorer 300. Let's see. All right, so let's jump into the test. The first thing I like to do is test for the actual usable battery capacity instead of the rated watt-hour capacity. Now, the rated watt-hour capacity of the 600X is 299 watt-hours, and on the Explorer 300, it's 293 watt-hours. But again, that's the rated capacity, not the usable capacity necessarily. So I'll pop up some clips here and kind of show that while I'm talking. But basically, I run a DC discharge test and an AC discharge test on both units to find out how they respond and how much output I actually get. So on the AC discharge test, on the Jump 600X, I got 270 watt hours usable. And on the Explorer 300, I got 277 watt hours usable. So just a slight advantage there. That just really means that the AC inverter is slightly more efficient on the E300. Now I also did a DC discharge test, and I got exactly the same numbers on both units from the DC discharge test. So I got 273 watt hours usable. All right, let's take a look at how these things respond to solar. Now, the stated DC input max capacity on the Explorer 300 is 90 watts. Now on the Jump 600X, the stated DC input max is 65 watts, so a fair amount lower than the 90 watts that the Explorer 300 says it has. Now I did a test with a 100 watt solar panel, and I will run that clip now so you can kind of see how that turned out. All right, I've got just a basic 100 watt portable solar panel here, and it is about 11:30 in the morning, and we do have nice clear sun up there. Now it is still kind of first week of October, so we're not going to get full output from this panel or even close to that. So what we're going to do is take the output from this solar panel and we're going to try it in both units and see what kind of output we get from a single 100 watt solar panel under decent conditions. So let's try the VTOMAN first. So we're in their upper 50s, 57 watts, let's call it. So now I'm using a DC 5521 to 9mm to fit the Jackery 300. So let's go ahead and connect that and see what we get on the Jackery 300. So 67 watts. So we're getting about 10 more watts on the Explorer 300 from Jackery than we were getting on the VTOMAN 600X. And that is due to the slight difference in DC input max. Now when I was charging these things up from their AC adapters, I also kind of noted what the differences there were for AC watt input, and I'll run that clip right now so you can see how that turned out. So the 600X comes with a 60 watt power supply, and as you can see, I'm getting 52 watts in from that power supply, and the Explorer 300 comes with a 90 watt power supply, and as you can see, I'm getting 76 watts in on the Explorer 300. So the Explorer 300 probably will be charging a little bit faster than the 600X via AC. So once again, here we have another advantage for the E300 because its DC input max is a little bit higher. Now I also ran the test using their 12 volt adapter, car adapter cables, the ones that they came with, and I ran those with my car running so I could get the maximum input. I'll run that clip up there. You can take a look and see how that turned out. All right, so I'm going to use the respective car chargers that these units came with. And I've got my car running, so I'm making sure I'm getting maximum output from my 12 volt port. So let's hook up the Explorer 300. Plug that in, and let's see what we get in terms of watt input. So it's not bad. We're getting 78 watts. Let's see how that fares on the 600. So again, I'm going to use the cables they came with. And the 600X is getting 1 watt shy of 60 watts, so 59 watts. So you're starting to see a trend here, right? So the E300 actually does charge anywhere from 15 to about 25% faster than the VTOMAN 600X. So that's just something to be aware of. This thing will charge just a little bit faster. And if that's super important to you, then this one wins that particular category. All right, now, another thing I like to make sure is whether or not something, especially in this capacity class, when we're talking 300 watt hours or a 300 watt inverter, can it handle the startup of a 12 volt fridge? I have come across a couple of models that I won't name, rock pals, that will not handle a 12 volt fridge startup. It'll shut down immediately. So let's find out how this fares here. Let's try the Jackery first. All right, so we've got power draw, we got the DC port active, and we can see that the fridge is actually running. So that's good. Once the fridge is running, we know that the power station can handle that initial startup surge. So I wasn't sure if the Jackery would handle it or not, the 300 anyway, and it apparently does. So that's good. Now I fully expect the 600X to handle it because it has a much bigger inverter. So as expected, no problem running a 12 volt fridge really on either one of these units. Now if you have a much larger 12 volt fridge with a bigger compressor, you might run into a problem with the Jackery not being able to handle that, but the 600X definitely can handle that. Now another big difference here between these two units is the inverter capacity. Now this is where the 600X has a significant advantage over the E300. So the E300 has a 300 watt continuous and I believe a 500 watt surge. So anything over 500 watts is going to trip immediately. So anything up to 500 watts, you'll get a couple of seconds out of it, maybe 3 or 4, maybe 5 seconds if you're lucky. And then it will shut down. But it will maintain anything 300 watts or less continuous, no problem. Now the 600X has a 600 watt continuous and a 1200 watt peak or surge capability. And in addition to that, it's got a what they call a boost technology. So what that means is if you have something with a momentary spike that jumps between 600 watts and say 1200 watts, like a large refrigerator, maybe kicks on and spikes well past that 600 watt range. No problem. This has got you covered with that 1200 watt surge. Now, let's say you want to run something that actually is continuous watt draw above 600 watts. Well, this thing can actually provide power to that unit without shutting down using its boost technology, but it will cap the output at 600 watts, which depending on the device will allow you to run that device just at a lower wattage and at maybe a lower motor speed, for example. Now, not all devices are going to be happy in that condition. So, for example, you could use like a heat gun. And if I try to use a heat gun on the E300 here, it'll shut down immediately as soon as I get past that 300 watt mark. Within a couple of seconds, it's done. The inverter shuts off. So what happens on the 600X is it'll allow you to keep running the device, but in a lower power state. So it doesn't just automatically kill the inverter and stop the device. And as I said, some devices work better than others on that. Some devices require that extra power or they will not run. So the net of all that is that you get a whole lot more flexibility in the kinds of things that you can run with the 600X than you do with the E300, because the E300 will just plain cut you off after 300 watts and you're done. All right, let's jump through the cons. What are the cons of the 600X versus the E300? First of all, it is literally twice as big as the E300, and it is twice as heavy. This is a little over 7 pounds. This is just a hair over 15 pounds. And so, twice as big, twice as heavy. I guess we could call that a con. This thing also charges anywhere from 15 to 25% slower on charge times, whether it's from AC through the car DC connector or through solar. 15 to 25% slower than the E300 on the charge times. So I kind of already talked about that. Now that's really all I've got in terms of the cons. Let's talk about the pros, because the pros significantly outweigh the cons. So these are the pros for the 600X. So first of all, in terms of price. So the list price on the E300 is $299, and you can get a $30 coupon right now on Amazon, which brings its adjusted price or sale price down to $270, which is not a bad price. But the 600X has a normal price of $399, so it sounds like it's more expensive. But there is an Amazon coupon for $180 off, and that brings the price down to $240, which is $30 cheaper than the sale price on the E300. That makes it actually a very good deal. Now, there might be an additional promo code for this. I don't know that for certain, but do check down in the description below, because as of the time that I'm making this video, I don't know if there's a promo code yet or not, but there might be. And if there is, I'll put it in the description below. So battery chemistry. This has the lithium iron phosphate battery chemistry, which has two advantages by itself. First of all, it's a more stable technology, and it's a less toxic technology, or chemistry, I should say. And it also, because lithium iron phosphate gives you a lot more charge cycles, you get literally 6 times the lifespan out of the 600X than you do out of the E300, because this uses lithium NMC, which has a much lower cycle count. We're literally talking 500 cycles to 80% capacity versus 3,000 cycles to 80% capacity. So significant difference there. Now, another pro for the 600X is the inverter. The inverter has twice the capacity, so 600 watts continuous, 1200 watts peak, plus that boost technology as well. So this only has 300 watts peak, or 300 watts continuous, 600 watts peak. Now, another interesting pro in the 600X column that I did not know until I started looking into this a little bit more is this actually is expandable. Like its big brother, the Jump 1000 and the Jump 1500, there's an expansion battery module. I don't have that yet, but I'm told it's coming. So that's very cool. But you can see that there is the port right here that allows you to connect up that expansion battery. So that's pretty slick. You can actually expand this from that 300 watt hour or 299 watt hour up to over 900 watt hours of capacity with the expansion modules. So that's pretty slick. There is no expandability with the E300. Now, continuing on with the pros, as I said, there's quite a few more pros than there are cons. But this thing does also have a jump start option. My other units came with the jump start cable, but this one did not. Now, continuing on with pros, with the 600X, you get 2 Type A ports on the USB connectors. You get only 1 over here, a Type A port. The 600X, in addition to the 12-volt car connector here, it also has 2 DC 5521 12-volt 10-amp accessory ports on it. You only get just the car port on this. You don't get the DC 5521 accessory ports. And then finally, there's a light on the front. Now, I've got mixed feelings about the lights on the power station, but actually the ones that are on the end, that are the tiny light bulb, like the big brother to the Explorer 1000, I never use that. But the ones on the power stations that I have that have the large, widely diffused LED, I find those to be very useful. So in this case, you know, it's a small advantage, but it's an advantage. You get the integrated light on the 600X. So very cool. And I got to figure out how to turn this off. So that's my pros and cons rundown. I really feel like the only real advantage that the Explorer 300 had was that it does charge just a little bit faster. Again, depending on which method you're using, could be anywhere from 15 to 25% faster. But I don't think that's necessarily a deal breaker. And when you look at the difference in price, the expanded inverter capability, and all the other pros that I mentioned, this thing really does outperform the E300 pretty handily. So hopefully you found some of this information useful. If you did, please consider giving me that thumbs up. I would really appreciate that. I know it's easy to forget. It's also easy to do if you happen to remember, and I would appreciate it. Consider subscribing if you're not a subscriber. I've got more solar panel videos. I've got more how-to and DIY stuff coming up, and that's definitely in the works. And I've got more power station videos coming up. So stay tuned for all of that. I do hope to see you in the next one. Until then, have fun out there.